What is this? Understanding the Railway Labor Act.
Negotiations for our next contract are in the preliminary stages. Therefore, it is vitally important that everyone have a strong understanding of the process that's going to be taking place. We need every flight attendant to support our negotiators, stand with them, and get involved in the process. It is essential to learn just how our negotiations procedures work. The first step in the process begins with every flight attendant understanding the Railway Labor Act. For those unfamiliar with the Railway Labor Act, it may seem confusing that a law with railway in its title would be relevant to flight attendants. The Railway Labor Act was originally passed in 1924. At this time, railroads were the single most important piece of national infrastructure, so special laws were passed to dictate the terms by which railway unions could collectively bargain for their workers' rights. In the following decade, aviation rapidly expanded to become an equally important piece of American infrastructure. And in 1936, the Railway Labor Act was amended to include workers in the airline industry. The Railway Labor Act lays out a specific procedure by which negotiations must be conducted for those subject to it.
Why wouldn't I be live right now? You okay, chatter? It's 3:49 on a Monday.
The Railway Labor Act is the federal law that governs labor relations in the airline industry. The Railway Labor Act is different than the National Labor Relations Act, which governs other private industry in the United States. The main difference between the Railway Labor Act and the National Labor Relations Act is that the contracts under the National Labor Relations Act expire with time. However, contracts under the Railway Labor Act don't expire. Railway Labor Act contracts become amendable. Negotiations begin with an exchange of openers, where the union and company exchange their opening proposals to set a baseline for the following negotiations. After this, the two parties enter into direct negotiations, where they bargain with one another and try to come to an agreement. If they do, this is called a tentative agreement, and a vote is held by the membership to determine whether the agreement will be ratified. If a tentative agreement isn't reached, negotiations proceed to the next stage, mediation. If direct negotiation fails to produce a tentative agreement, either side, union or company, can request a mediator from the National Mediation Board to assist in the negotiation process. Another phase of negotiation begins, once again with the goal of reaching a tentative agreement for the union.
So the tentative agreement was reached, but the contract was not ratified, as in the rank and file voting process did not get the necessary amount of votes to say that, hey, like, we, the union rank and file, the members of the union actually like this tentative agreement. Why? Well, the reason is very simple. Because it did not feature the top of the hour ad break, okay, and how you can avoid it. They were like, no, we want $5 extra so we can avoid the top of the hour ad break, and you know, if we don't have $5, we want at least a Twitch Prime to avoid the top of the hour ad break, and if not, we want a gifted sub to avoid the top of the hour ad break. Okay, these are very serious. These are very serious demands that people made. Okay, well, luckily for you, at the top of the hour, there's a 6-second ad break. But if you want an uninterrupted experience, you can do all of those things, right? You can do those things to avoid the top of the hour ad break. Here's the 1-minute ad break now. Oh, that was so good. Oh my God, that was gross. That was one of my worst ones. Oh. Okay. Anyway, the point is, they wanted sick leave and they were not offered sick leave. They got an increase in salary, but not sick leave. When the whole point of the fucking thing was sick leave, more staffing, and an opportunity to see their children, and also having the opportunity to get days off when they're sick.
Union membership to vote on. There is no time limit on how long this phase can last. If an agreement is reached, it is sent to the membership for ratification. If the company and the union still fail to reach an agreement, then the National Mediation Board offers to submit.
That's crazy that chat gave that a 7-11. Like, you know the bot's broken. Okay? And yes, I did see the I did see the chat analyzing my burp for heartburn. Someone literally had the audacity to say, I listened to that burp and it felt a little heartburny. God, I fucking love this platform so much and also hate it at the same time. There is just no like there will never be another place on the planet that has this experience. You will never get that. You're lying? There's no way? No, someone actually did that. Where is it? It was before this one. Before Dongo said it. They said it was a little acid refluxy. Yeah, there it is. Reaction. It sounded a little refluxy. Sag. It sounded a little throw up-y. For fuck's sake, it's a joke. He says Sag.
Submit any remaining disputes to binding arbitration. The National Mediation Board holds an arbitration hearing and makes decisions for each dispute, which are then imposed upon both the union and the company without a ratification vote. Both parties must agree to binding arbitration in order for a hearing to be held. Again, both parties must agree to binding arbitration in order for a hearing to commence. If either party rejects arbitration, then negotiations enter a 30-day cooling-off period. During this time, supermediation talks continue in an attempt to reach an agreement. If an agreement is reached before the end of the cooling-off period, it's sent to the membership for ratification. At this point, if no agreement is reached, and if a dispute appears that it may threaten essential aspects of American transportation, then the National Mediation Board will notify the President of the United States, who may establish a Presidential Emergency Board. The Presidential Emergency Board will make recommendations to resolve disputes or attempt.
I got to point something out here, okay? Despite what the media tries to portray it as, there's always two sides to every fucking union negotiations process. And unfortunately, given the right-wing slant of capitalist media globally, that is oftentimes overlooked. They make it seem like there's only one side that's responsible for a work stoppage. They always blame the workers. They always say, oh, well, why the fuck don't the workers get back to work? They're being selfish. They're fucking over other workers. That is reactionary, right-wing, capitalist framing. What you should do instead is bully the fucking capital owners, because they are the ones who are not abiding by the reasonable demands that the workers make. The union still wants a place of business to operate. A union, oftentimes under capitalist structures, also recognizes that profit is important. Okay? So they do not ask for things that the capital owners are unable to give, because they still want to have a place of work. And yet, in spite of all of that, the media makes it seem as though this is a one-sided endeavor that could easily be ended by only one side and one side only, the workers. It is not the truth. The truth is, if you want to look at it from a one-sided perspective, the capital owners have infinitely more that they could do to end the work stoppage, to meet the demands of the workers. And yet, the greed expressed by capital owners, the bosses, the railroad owning corporations, and the shareholders, is never seen as weird. Greed in that respect is seen as good. Inversely, it's not even greed when workers are demanding more from the labor that they're putting in, demanding higher wages or demanding better benefits to make their workplace more humane. That's not greed in that regard. And yet it is still seen as greed and seen as a bad thing. It's really fucked up. And the only reason why people see that, the only reason why people see it in the way it is because the media absolutely operates in this right-wing way. because they are also beholden to the same corporate benefactors, and they are an arm of capital.
Attempt to negotiate their own agreement. If no tentative agreement is reached by the end of the cooling off period, the union and the company are permitted to engage in self-help. This is a crucial point. Only at this point may the parties engage in self-help. For example, the union may strike, or the company may impose unilateral work rules or lock out union members from working. The union and the company may only seek self-help once the process has reached this point in the negotiations, where an agreement has failed to be reached under multiple phases of negotiation. At this point, the Railway Labor Act has run its course. Something to consider is that these processes could take a very long time, spanning weeks, months, or even years. It's rare for negotiations to ever reach this point, as both parties need to be so fundamentally at odds with one another that they are unable to reach an agreement through each step of the negotiation process. Now that we have reviewed the railway...
So if they were to do that, okay, I don't even know if it would ever get to that point, but this would be an unauthorized illegal strike because this is an essential service that like railroads are offering. One of the things that they would probably do is literally strike, if there's a picket and they're doing a work stoppage, they would most likely bring in the National Guard and force scabs to work, and the union members would try to stop the scabs from going into the workplace, and they would either use the military, most likely they would either use the military or the police force to break through that and bring in scabs and continue, force the railroads to operate in the way that they were. Even though whenever they do actually bring scabs, or sometimes bring like front office people, this is something that's done. This was done at the Kellogg's factory, if you remember. A lot of issues arise because the reality is that these motherfuckers who are scabbing aren't professionals. They don't know how to fucking use the equipment. They did this in John Deere. Someone lost their leg, if I'm not misremembering. Remember when John Deere had a fucking factory-wide strike, and they tried to bring in the front office people? They tried to bring in the people in like the higher-ups to go work on the factory floor, and they didn't know how to use the professional equipment. You could literally cause people to kill people if we're talking about trains and railroads. If you're going to make people who don't know how to fucking use the railroads conductors and people who are line operators, you could actually end up killing a bunch of people. Straight up. Yeah, here it is. The page does not exist apparently. But yeah, they had to immediately tractor crash. They fucking flipped the truck, I think. There was one. Not people expendable workers, so it's okay, but they're not though. And that's when they come to that realization shortly thereafter. Capitalists love fucking relitigating age-old lessons that they learned through bloodshed. Okay? After all, every single piece of regulation and rule that is written in place is written with the ink of blood. Okay? When you talk about OSHA, like one of the things that like factory workers love making jokes about is how fucking restrictive OSHA is, okay? But like all of those rules were written in so much fucking blood. It's not the nanny state, okay? It's motherfuckers losing fingers, arms, legs, breaking their goddamn backs for that level of restriction to exist, like workplace safety rules to exist. It's just like when Elon Musk took over Twitter and was like, we're going to go buck wild. Or when he took over Twitter and said, I'm going to eliminate the verification process, only to very quickly relearn that lesson that, oh shit, you actually need a verification process so Eli Lilly doesn't lose $8 billion in a fucking day. That's crazy. It's like literally relearning the rules by experiencing it again. And that's what happens when you're a fucking dumbass, like a kid that you tell your child not to fucking touch the open fire, okay? And your kid's like, nah, I'm going to touch it anyway. And at a certain point, you let him touch it so they learn the lesson, okay? Oh, fuck, I burned my finger. But then Elon Musk is like a child who keeps going back to the fire and touching it. Same shit with these idiots.